welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. It's episode 2, basically all about Reacher. Probably the best thing that's been on TV for a reasonable amount of time. At least that's my opinion anyways, but we'll get into that in more detail. So, I guess, how you been?
I've been good. Actually enjoyed this week's homework, which was to watch Reacher season 2. Much better than the previous weeks for episode 1. But yeah, very happy with season 2 of Reacher.
Not really much of a contest, though, was it?
Definitely dark. Essentially night and day, the comparison between the two.
Yeah. So, I guess there's no real way to start this other than what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were they progressed the story on well from season 2 from season 1, when they introduced the character, especially since they had to follow the movies with Tom Cruise. So I thought they did a great job introducing the character in season 1, but I felt that they did move the character forward. We got to know a bit more about the character, some more history behind and what was he like before he became this wandering nomad. The acting was good. Overall, I was very happy. I do have a couple of points that I wasn't happy with, but they are very, very minor, and they did not stop me from enjoying the 8 episodes.
And how would you say, at least to you felt that it compared to season 1?
I would say it's almost like a different type of show. It feels more action thriller, whereas season 1 felt more thriller.
Yeah,
so that's like
that was definitely something that I took from it. It had, for me, season 2 was worse than season 1. It was still absolutely amazing, but it just wasn't as good. While there wasn't anything that I felt didn't quite make sense, it was just, it had less of the thriller, the mystery sort of vibe regarding it. And it was definitely more action-paced. It also felt like there was a little bit more humor injected, but that may well have just been because basically you had Reacher surrounded by people who'd known Reacher for quite a while, so he was a little bit warmer rather than, how sort of distant he is for a significant part of season 1. The key reason I would say, at least for me, that it felt a bit less thrillery is in season 1, it kept you guessing as to who at least all of the bad guys were. Because it kind of hints that this guy's a bad guy, and then it hints that this guy's a bad guy, then one of them gets killed, so he can't be the bad guy. But, it's that sort of thing in season 1. In season 2, you basically know who the bad guy is very, very early in the season. The only sort of the only sort of mystery part is how does a certain individual basically fit within that, and they just keep touting that for basically, I think, the entire latter half of the season to make you think that he might be involved. But when you've got a cast member basically turning around and saying, "I don't believe that he's involved," it's like setting you up that he's not involved, and obviously, as it turns out, he's not. So it just feels like there was a lot less what I would expect from a thriller, kind of like sharp turns, keeping you guessing, all of that sort of stuff. It was very much action-paced, basically going through the story. That's not a bad thing. Like you said, it's just a very different feel, basically, with regards to the season.
I think, though, that was the point of season 2, that they didn't want to just repeat, who's the bad guy, like they did in season 1. Because as you say, they did a fantastic job of keeping you guessing for that. So that's why I think in season 2, they made it a different guessing game. Instead of like, who's the bad guy? Is this person involved? I agree. They did have one character telling you the whole time that they didn't believe he was involved. but you also had other members of the team telling you that he was involved, or at least
Yeah.
had potential to be involved. And they even threw in a couple of flashback scenes that were like, ooh, could he be involved? So I thought they did a good job with the guessing game, and I really didn't mind that we were told who the main villain was pretty much episode 1, 2, because it was kind of, instead of guessing who the villain was, it was like, oh, when are they going to figure out who the villain is and how are they going to solve this problem? It wasn't so much who the villain is, it's how they're going to stop the villain.
Yeah. Speaking of, I did read something. It was so clickbaity and it made me click it and then didn't reference anything that was in the description, which really bugged me. Basically, someone turned around in, it was an article, I think for The Atlantic, and basically it turned around and said on the Google search that the final episode left it unclear as to what had happened to that same individual. And you're sat there going, his eye and his finger were in a jar, and the guy basically admits that he killed him. It was not unclear at all. And then it didn't mention anything of that, basically, in the article. And I was sat there going, oh, you got us to click it to try to find, basically, because I would have ripped you apart. But no, it wasn't there. They were just basically taunting me. Like, you know, red cloth to a bull. I was just like, I was ready to rip it apart. But yeah, I mean, I know I'm kind of like nitpicking with regards to the thrillerish-ness of it, but it's the only real thing that sticks out as to why I didn't enjoy it as much as season 1. It was, like I said, it was still just absolutely amazing. It was great, and I couldn't fault it. And you know, I couldn't really fault it. I'm really looking at basically picking hairs to try to find some reason to critique it. It was well written. The characters were well developed. They actually saw development throughout the season. You had women characters who were not able to destroy 250-pound men, but had to use their training and combat style to basically overcome it, which was refreshing, because obviously there's far too much media these days where a woman of 90 pounds basically kicks the absolute shit out of a 250-pound bloke, which in the real world would never happen. And because of those things, I found the characters more relatable. I found the story more relatable. And I actually found that it was grounded in some form of reality, like rather than just being pie in the sky. And as a result, I just thought that the entirety of the show was really good. There were a few little things with the story where you think, well, why did the bad guys do that? Are these the thickest bad guys known to man? But again, it's splitting hairs.
No, and I think you have to give a bit of leeway with stupid decisions made by bad guys, or the good guy would never actually win in TV shows or movies. But I agree, there was a couple of points where I'm like, just shoot them. You win, just shoot them.
Yeah. And then you walk away into the sunset with $65 million and loads of planes start falling from the sky.
Yeah.
The one thing I will take from this, and I was going to obviously leave this point until later, but I'm just going to basically hash it out now. This is what happens when writers actually use the source material in the correct way. You get a show which is coherent and, for the most part, actually resembles the source material. And because of that, it ends up being coherent on the screen, and it doesn't piss anyone off. Now, for that, I would say that the writers have done a great job. Like, I would say it's really well written. That may well be because the book is amazing. Or, and you know, basically that would mean that effectively I'm giving them false credit. They've just adapted it. But in so many times where people take source material and try to adapt it into a series form or a film form, they start injecting identity politics. They start changing the storyline to fit a modern audience. and basically messing around where they shouldn't mess around, imagine how much better some shows would have been if their writing teams could have done something so basic. Now, I'm saying it's basic. It might be way more difficult than what I'm saying, but just the simple fact that the show has basically respected the source material, I think plays a massive part in it actually being as good a show as it is. If you think, how good would The Witcher have been if it had actually resembled the source material? Henry Cavill wouldn't have left. And, I don't care what anyone says, he was carrying that show. And season 3 was horrific. But if it had respected the source material, we'd have had a better story. Henry Cavill would still be there. There's other things as well, like Wheel of Time. There's Halo, which obviously with season 2 coming up is something that we might touch on later. There's a lot of different shows where if they'd have just put the same respect into the source material that the writers here did, would have almost certainly ended up significantly better than what they were.
Well,
I don't know what your thoughts are on that anyways.
Well, I've never read any of the books, so how accurate they are, how each season is, I have absolutely no idea. All I know is I enjoyed the show, and they didn't treat the audience like children. They didn't have to be like, "Ooh, 1 + 1 = 2." It was like, no, we're not going to feed you everything all at once. We're going to drip feed you little snippets of information so that we'll keep you on your toes, and even you as the audience won't know what's going on fully until almost the end of the show. And that's great. That's absolutely fantastic. Really got no problems with shows doing that, because it actually forced me, not that I needed to be forced to watch the next episodes, but at the end of every episode I just immediately wanted to start the next one, because it was I found that they left them on great cliffhangers.
It made you want to binge it, which is the shame with a show like that, because they release the episodes weekly and basically leave you hanging, which I know is part of the reason why the viewing figures for it will have been quite as good as they were. I don't know anything more up to date than the 24th of December, but the week running up to the 24th, between Reacher season 1 and I think there were 3 episodes of season 2 available, it was the second most watched streamed, basically second most streamed show in the world. It did over, I think it was 1.1 billion minutes, which is pretty well going in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And then you've got every week after that, if you think, I don't want to work it out as to how many people actually watched it, but if you think that you've got like another 45 minutes every week after that for another 5 episodes, and then how many people will have left it to binge all in one go, which I know you did, over that period of time, they could be over something like 2 or 3 billion minutes.
Oh, easily. Shall we get into specifics about what we liked and what we didn't like about Reacher?
Yeah, why not? You could. I'll let you go first. I'll be a gent.
Okay. Well, this section is definitely going to be spoilers heavy. So, if you don't want spoilers,
if anyone hasn't watched season 1, I've pretty much just spoiled those for season 1 and the ending of season 2.
Yeah. Which I think we should definitely say a bit more at the beginning of these streams.
It's fine. It's fine. When the video goes up on YouTube, I'll just edit some stuff and put in spoiler, so it's fine.
So,
why are you watching a review if you don't want spoilers?
Well, some reviews are spoiler free. I am going to start with a negative. And okay. One of the negatives I have is some of the fight scenes, not all, some of the fight scenes were not good. They were very fake.
Which one do you have in mind?
I have 2. not the whole fight scene, but specific parts of the fight scene. I believe it's the episode 2 when they're in Atlantic City and Reacher is fighting in that construction yard.
Yeah.
The bricks that he threw.
You mean the explosive? What is it made out of? It's breeze blocks. Yeah, the explosive breeze blocks.
They looked so rubbery and so not gonna hurt. Like they just looked fake. And I will say that took me out of it for a brief moment because I thought to myself, "Oh yeah, they're clearly fake bricks."
Yeah.
So that was
I mean,
one negative.
In all fairness, he did throw it pretty hard. So if they weren't fake bricks, the other guy's armor would have probably been smashed to pieces.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying because, like, it hits him and it almost like explodes. It doesn't even break, and then he throws him onto, I think, a pallet of them beneath, and they like spray outwards. Whereas if it was a real pallet, it would just have like practically snapped the guy in two.
Yeah. So that was one.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Okay. The second one is later in the season where he's fighting in the bus. I think this might be episode 7.
Yes, it is, I think.
So he chokes out the first guy.
Yeah.
No problem with that because he's using his bare hands. But the second guy that comes on the bus, he chokes him out by pushing his throat against a pole on the bus. And when the guy is losing consciousness and collapsing, it just looked so. The acting in that part just didn't look good. It was just so again, it took me out of it for a brief moment. But
I've got another one that I want to add to this to see if you can understand my. I let it go because I was loving the show, and it was when he's fighting the guy on the. Was that season 1? I watched them both back to back again. Yeah, it's season 1. Ignore me. Yeah, there's a part in season 1 where he chokes out a guy with his tie by basically jumping off the thing, but the tie's around the guy's neck, and with the weight of him, he'd snap the guy's neck. He wouldn't choke him. His neck would just snap, like his head would just go like that. But he's over this like fire escape. So his head's like the fire escape's like on his shoulder blades. What is it? I'm trying to think of the word. Like the fence, I guess? The railing. So the railing's on his shoulder and the neck's on here, and he jumps off and he's hanging his whole weight with the tie around this guy's neck. And I'm sat there going, his neck would snap.
Probably.
Either your tie's going to snap or his neck's going to snap. Because you weigh probably about 250, 300 pounds. And I'm pretty sure a neck is not meant to withstand that sort of force. So it's not something which is just contained to season 2.
Yeah. So another thing, again, it's part of a fight scene, but it's not the fighting itself. It's when they're on the helicopter in episode 8.
Yep.
And it's the gurney.
Yeah.
I have no problem with him stopping the gurney, rolling out the back of the helicopter, and then him still managing to fight, and he has to sacrifice a couple of punches here and there to keep his friend from dying. But when it falls out of the helicopter and he is holding onto it, I'm not saying he couldn't hold onto it with one arm. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just like, at this point, the bad guys have won. Like, there is no reason that they are losing this fight. He is hanging onto a gurney, hanging out the back of a helicopter. His other friend is strapped into the other gurney, still trapped, and the woman is on the gurney that's hanging out the back of a helicopter. So she's not going to be much help in this fight. So when I saw this, I was just like, oh no, this is stupid. Like,
Yeah, but this, you know what it is? The problem with this comes down to the stupid decisions of the bad guys, which obviously we came beforehand. Because the bad guy says to Reacher, I'm basically going to smash your skull in. Rather than just smashing the skull in, he goes into a monologue and says, I'm going to smash your skull in. But if you let her go, basically, I'll do you a favor. I'll just throw you after her. And then once Reacher gets back on, I'm pretty sure he then pulls out the switchblade. Why didn't he just pull out the switchblade and jam it straight into Reacher's hand or his arm? And
or his
basically make
neck.
like the hell. Yeah. Like, if you wanted to toy with him, cut off his fingers one at a time.
Yeah, it was for me. I let a lot of stupidity go from the bad guys. Like, I completely understood. Let's torture Reacher because he's been a thorn in our side this entire time. Let's decide to drop them out of the helicopter instead of just shooting them. I'm like, sure, sure, sure. But then that fight scene on the helicopter, I was fine with.
It was the worst, like, retarded moment from bad guys.
Yeah.
By quite a considerable distance. Like, I know there's some people circulating who have a problem with how she escapes. Basically from the gurney. I mean, I like, if she could escape, why didn't she escape beforehand? But if she escaped beforehand, she was still going to be strapped to a table in other ways, and they would have stopped her from getting away. So she had an actual reason to escape. So maybe she was able to escape, but just didn't have the opening to actually escape. But my problem with the helicopter moment is the helicopter moment needn't have happened in any way, shape, or form. Neagley sees basically them both being wheeled to the helicopter, so she knows what's going to happen. She then sets up the whole thing at the gate, gets inside. She then runs to the helicopter and kills the two bad guys that have just wheeled them onto the helicopter. But rather than go to the helicopter and pull them out, even though there's still the pilot alive on the helicopter, she runs into the building. And that, for me, was the only part of the show where I genuinely thought this doesn't make sense.
I also think episode 8 suffered from, when's this going to end? Because it felt like the show finished about halfway through that episode, because they stopped the bad guys. They stopped the bad guys. They cleaned up all the loose ends, and then it was like 15 minutes of just them spending the $65 million, and I was like,
you see, I don't have an issue with that. I that is one thing I don't have an issue with. It's kind of, the way I would describe it is like the end of Return of the King, which we've had this discussion many times. But they need to apply a bit of time to end people's arcs, because there's a very good chance that depending on the story that they do, we're not going to see McConnell again. We're not going to see Dixon again. We might not even see Neagley again. Although it is heavily suggested that Neagley wants to stay in touch at the end of the episode. But you have to nip those arcs kind of off for two reasons. Firstly, if they're not going to be in the show again. And secondly, in case they don't do another season.
No, I think they could have ended it quicker. It
makes sense by nipping it together like that. Granted, I do appreciate it could have been a bit more concise, rather than, basically the final sex scene between Reacher and Dixon. You had all of that, which was sort of, I would say, extraneous. They could have just basically said at some point that this is like all business, like they did, but just left it there. So they could have nipped it a bit earlier, but I don't have a problem with the amount of time that they actually spent basically doing it, because I'd rather they did that than leave all of these potential avenues open. Because if they don't do that at the end of this season, then if they do a season 3, they will have to, it potentially leaves the door open for them having to explain stuff then, rather than you just taking it for a given.
Sure. Okay, so that's enough negative for the time being. Let's go to some positive. The acting in this was very good. Considering they had to introduce several new characters who supposedly have a incredible relationship and background with Reacher, it all felt like, yeah, this is actually a group that's been working together for years and they have each other's back. At no point was I questioning why this person was in the group, or was I questioning the loyalty, or did it feel like, no, actually, it doesn't feel like these guys have a good relationship. It doesn't feel natural. But for the whole thing, I was like, yeah, this is clearly a group that has worked together in the past, and they treat each other more like family than friends. And I was completely on board with it. They sold it to me pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And to get to pick a specific time point when the acting was sublime was when the New York detective dies. And
Yeah. To be fair, we've already kind of briefly discussed this. Neagley's acting at that moment was unbelievable. Like the actress that plays her was just fantastic. You could see
Maria Sten.
You could see on her face, because obviously, if anyone hasn't watched Reacher, sorry, we've basically spoiled everything. But Neagley does not like touching people. She basically, the only time she touches someone is if she's usually putting her fist or knee in someone's face. That's basically the only time. Reacher's her best friend, and she can't even bring herself to hug him or anything like that. So she hates physical contact. But Rousseau is dying, and you can see in her face that she does not want to grab his hand. And it leaves it hanging for probably between 3 and 5 seconds, where you can see this war going on inside of her, on her face. And then she grabs the hand. And you're sat there going, completely relatable. Excellent acting. But all the characters were that well. And I know we've been a bit negative with regards to the fight choreography or the stupidity of the bad guys, but the actual character building that the show does is immense.
I agree. They balance the current story, current issue that they're trying to solve with the flashbacks to when they were in the 110th and working as a actual investigator unit. I think the synergy between those two is absolutely sublime, because each flashback adds something, not just to the story that's taking place, but it adds something to each character, because the flashbacks are usually, there's only one or two of them in the flashback, and it's picking a specific moment where they had something related to what's going on in the present. And I just thought the way they had edited it together, it just felt seamless, and it added so much to the actual story, character development, the character arcs that you have from when you see these people several years in the past, how they acted and behaved, to what they're like in the present, and how they're, not all of them are very different, but some of them are vastly different. But it doesn't feel jarring. It feels like, because even the characters within the show, like Reacher and Neagley Dixon, they comment on how is it O'Connell, how he becomes more of a family man compared to how he was back when he was in the 110th, when he was a playboy. And that just feels like, because they are joking with him, and it feels like that's exactly what friends would do. They haven't seen each other in years, but there's not this awkwardness of like, oh, hi, how's it going? It's boom, straight. Let's make jokes again. Let's ridicule each other. That's how we show affection. And I just thought, this is fantastic.
When they're introduced, you believe there's a backstory. The flashbacks provide you with the backstory. Normally, when we talk about developing a character, we're talking about moving a character forward, basically on their arc. So they start here, they end there, and basically they take a journey. What this show, I feel, does exceptionally well is the flashbacks actually form part of that arc. They flesh the arc out and the development of the character. So rather than looking at things happening to develop your understanding and develop the character, we're looking at things which have happened, which basically take that role. And it just helps to give you a greater understanding of why each character is the way they are now. Even though, you know, it's something which isn't explicitly said that things have changed. You see how they were, you see how they are, and all of the flashbacks of how they were fit as explanations as to why they've become that way. If you understand what I mean. I know that was a bit jarring.
Yeah. So I will say the character additions in season 2 have been great. Not only the 110th unit, but also I thought the interactions with the NYPD cop Russo, I think his name is. I thought he had a good role to play. I thought again the acting from the actor was very good. I thoroughly enjoyed, even though he was quite well, not quite a few, but a few inches shorter than Reacher. He just didn't back down. He was very happy with standing up to him, standing his ground. And to be honest, I was genuinely surprised when he died. I thought they were going to manage to get him to the hospital.
Yeah.
However, when Reacher first meets him and breaks his nose, there was there was a lacking of significant bruising and stuff around the face. Like there was a tiny bruise on the inside of his eye, but if he'd had his nose broken, I'm pretty sure that the bruising would be a lot worse.
Yeah, and they were only really gone for about a day or two to Atlantic City.
Yeah, so that's just a slight negative. It didn't really affect the story at all. It's not like,
to be fair, it's such a minor detail that it doesn't break the immersion in the episode at all. Like I didn't even pick that up, and normally I am really nitpicky about everything.
So
the one thing I will say about like the characters and the development of the characters, it was just they were well written characters. You know, I say this a lot of the time in Hollywood, in shows and everything. There seems to be this fear of putting women in situations where they can be vulnerable, and it obviously with the increased female cast, there were situations where they were vulnerable, but they used their training to overcome basically any vulnerabilities, or someone else basically did something that allowed them to basically gain the upper hand. They were okay with showing them as not being perfect, untouchable. There's no way to put it. Girl bosses, like a lot of modern day media seems to put that they are perfect individuals. There's no possible way that they can improve, and their character arc is flat. But in this, they have those vulnerabilities. Again, bringing it back to Neagley, she doesn't do personal contact, but that forms part of her arc for me when she basically takes Rousseau's hands. So the characters themselves are just like, personally, I think they're impeccably written. I
there
believe
was,
that they could be real people.
yeah, fully. I did have a slight question when I was watching the show because in the flashbacks, there's an additional character. There's an additional member of the unit of the 110.
He's dead. It is mentioned in episode 1 after he's flown out and they're trying to ring everyone. Reacher asks about him,
Oh,
and
I
she
missed that.
mentions that he got hit by a pickup truck.
Oh, I missed that. Oh,
And he said, "You should have called. You should have. Why didn't you message me? You could have given me the emergency signal like you have today." And basically, she turns around and says, "Firstly, that is something I've only just thought about, and it wasn't an emergency for the funeral. The emergency was when he was hit by the pickup truck."
I completely missed that.
Yeah, that is in the episode. They completely explained that. There's loads of other little things that I love that there was just the slightest hint to them. So people might be wondering where this relates in comparison to the Tom Cruise films. So Never Go Back is basically set after this, so that hasn't happened. It's very difficult to compare the Reacher that Tom Cruise plays to the Reacher of these seasons. They are definitely different takes on the same character, and I wouldn't necessarily want to compare them. But the story of the first Jack Reacher, they allude to, and by that I mean the first film with Tom Cruise, they allude to in the car in episode 2, I think. When they're talking about potential suspects that might be wanting to take them out, they mention basically the first person that O'Connell comes up with that could do this. He goes, James Barr's smart enough to do this, and he goes, no, I dealt with that basically a year prior, about a year ago, and he owes me one now. So it mentions that basically the story, I think the book's called One Shot, that is set about a year and a half prior to basically this episode. And I like that they had the thought of adding that just to give some added context of where it actually fits in the Reacher timeline. Because people might not be aware, there's in excess of 20 books. They don't all follow chronological order either. So the first one that was written isn't actually the first one chronologically. It's like the 7th. So it was just a nice nod to, again, the source material, which is obviously all the books, and, that things have been happening basically in between.
Yeah. As you say, there was several just little snippets. It was like blink and you miss it. Bits of information, because when he was talking to was he a governor or a senator? Anyway,
the senator that they bust at the end.
Yeah. When they're in the monkey enclosure.
Lavoy? I think it was Lavoy, the surname.
Anyway, it's a throwaway line where he just says, "Oh yeah, like 3 years ago you were in Margrave. You had a Margrave incident." So that's season 1. So that just tells you immediately that it is a few years later. This isn't like next week sort of thing. It's a few years have passed. And
you might not have noticed this one as well. But when they're pretending to be FBI agents, they go by basically references to the first season. Because obviously Finley's there from the first season. So he goes, I can't remember what he goes by the surname Margrave.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he says his first name is. And the other person, O'Connell, he goes by the who was it? The blues artist, the one that he the whole reason he goes to Margrave, his surname's the blues artist.
I must say, I liked the fact that Finley was in it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a very very short. And I think if he had been in it much more than that, it would have taken away from the relationship that was being developed and shown with his team again. But I thought the fact that they had him in for like 5 minutes in a single episode and the interaction that he had with Richa, it was like, oh yeah, they still have a good friendship.
But it wasn't. This is like another pet hate of mine in shows. I said it last week with Daredevil and Echo. Let's not go down that rabbit hole again. It wasn't a needless cameo. It actually moved the story forward because it was to set up the guy. So he basically fake busted the guy. It was structurally relevant to the story that they were putting on. It wasn't just a member berry. Like, oh, look at this guy. Oh, remember him from season 1? Oh, and he's gone. Like, without there being any meaning for him to be there. And I like that where basically, if you are going to do a cameo, at least bother to make it actually relevant or structural to the story. Now, again, that might be basically how it happens in the books. It might not necessarily be down to the writer itself, but I like that.
So we've touched upon some stupidity by the villains. However, we haven't talked about one of the villains, which is AM in this show. The guy, essentially the broker, the weapons broker.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say something about the story with him. How lucky must you be to find someone who looks identical to you just by looking out of the window?
Yeah, that was quite fortuitous.
Yeah. It's like, he looks like he's my twin. I will steal his identity. Like that was probably the only point where I would say that there was a plot hurdle that they needed to basically jump. And you could have made him look at least a little bit different, but he looked surprisingly the same.
Yeah. Like they could have had something with prosthetics or something like that, which would have been a bit more of a hurdle to overcome. But the fact that it was just like, oh crap, all my alias have been burned. I need to get to the other end of the country. Oh, look, that guy looks like me.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I'll just go kill him.
I've got a solution. Yeah. Like his solution from the point where he admitted that he had a problem took him 5 seconds to solve.
Yeah. I will say one thing, one of my big takeaways from watching his story, because he very rarely interacts with the main characters. His is a very side questy sort of thing where you just keep jumping to him through the show.
Yeah, what he said at the end, that he didn't kill any of his friends, was 100% correct. He did not kill any of them. He was not involved. The only interaction that he directly had with basically the 110th was at the end when the 110th killed him.
Yeah.
That was it.
Like 1 minute. That was it.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was quite the interesting character himself and what he had to go through. But my big takeaway from him was like, you actually leave yourself quite vulnerable when you're with people. Like, it took nothing, and I know it's a TV show and all that sort of stuff, but it takes nothing for him to like just stab people and cut their throats and that. And it's when you think about like how many people you let within your personal space on a daily basis, it really wouldn't take much for somebody just to slip a knife into your back or into your neck or something. So that was because essentially he just kills everybody with his knife. But to be honest, there's not much to actually say about him because he just kind of goes around killing people with a knife to get to the end where he gets shot to death by the 110th team. So
well, as a character, he's completely undeveloped, but that's because there's no reason to develop him for the storyline. He's literally just there to facilitate the storyline. Now, interestingly enough, I did read a review where the closing remarks were so weird. They basically turned around and said that by the end of episode 1 or 2, that they were unable to figure out what the storyline was, but they didn't care because it was so action-packed. And I was sat there going, there was never a period where I could not fathom what the storyline was.
Hmm.
And I mean, the storyline was pretty neon. And as I've already said, everything that was in the episode served in some way to either explain that storyline or move the storyline forward. So,
I agree.
I thought it was a very, very weird take when I read it. As you can tell, I've probably had a bit too much time the last few days if I'm reading Dross like that.
Well, I think before we wrap up the Reacher 2 roundup, I think we should talk about Swan. Bain talked about this or hinted at this quite early on in the overview, which was Swan is a member of Reacher's team, the 110th Special Investigators, but it's hinted at throughout the entire season that he might be involved with the bad guy. And I personally think they do a very good job of keeping it is he a good guy, is he a bad guy sort of thing throughout the whole thing, because Reacher defends Swan till the very end. He defends him with passion. However, the other members of the team, Dixon, O'Donnell, and Neagley, are all very much like, it's possible that he could have turned. And then we have a flashback where the flashback very much kind of hints that, actually, he might actually have become a bad guy after leaving the army. So I thought they did a very good job with Swan. And then when you find out that he indeed is a good guy, and of course he didn't go bad and all of that, but sadly he is dead. I thought that was a great mystery, and it did, like, because from episode to episode my opinion changed. I was like, yeah, it's going to be revealed that he's working with the bad guy, and then I was like, oh no, it's going to be revealed that he's alive, but he's held captive because they need like his thumbprint and eye scan. I did not expect him to be dead, and they just had his eye and his finger.
I did.
No, I thought they were actually going to have him alive.
Yeah, this might be a hot take, but that was probably one of the things I would say was, for me, one of the worst worked out things, because Reacher is loyal to a fault. But if Reacher was saying what he always says, that assumptions kill. And he was the person suggesting that basically Swan could be dirty, but one of the other team members was suggesting that basically, no, he definitely wasn't. I would have been more on tenterhooks as to whether or not it was the case. But we know that Reacher is rarely wrong. And if he is wrong, he's wrong by a very small degree. So it might have made sense. For instance, he's saying, no, he's innocent. And the degree of wrongness was that Swan was still alive. You could say that. But I don't think if the show puts it forward that he is rarely wrong about anything, because it would shake him to his core. It would fundamentally break the character. So I never thought that Swan was a bad guy.
That's fair enough. But I will say there was a couple of moments where even Reacher had to take a moment to himself. Like in front of his team, he was very like, no, Swan's a good guy. The guy that I hired back then is never going to be a bad guy. He cannot be involved in this. But when he went for his private walk and when he had his thoughts alone, again, great acting from Alan.
I'm sure he said it to didn't he say it to Dixon? And Dixon said that because I'm sure he said something like, if Swan is dirty, he's basically going to choke the life out of him. Yeah. But then, like an episode later, he's talking to Dixon and he's seeming quite vulnerable, which you wouldn't think because he's a beast of a man. basically he's seeming quite vulnerable, and she basically says that don't worry about it. When the time comes, I'll kill him because he wouldn't be able to bring himself to actually kill him. And
yes.
I like that. I like that because it actually went a bit of the way to show Reacher as potentially being vulnerable. But that's kind of what I meant. If Swan actually was off the reservation, it would have broke Reacher as a character. Like it would have mentally destroyed him. And you could see that just by those hints. As he's like potentially thinking, at least to himself, you can see that it's having a negative effect.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. I didn't need Swan to be a bad guy, but the way it's portrayed in the like I say, the way Reacher was very much like when he was in his private thoughts and he was actually thinking, oh, some doubt is creeping in. I thought that was incredibly well played because it was subtle. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It didn't beat you over the head with it. So again, it's another credit to the writers and the acting and the directing of this whole season, that things have been done subtly. I don't need to be clobbered over the head with every story point, with every piece of information. They can just have it naturally flow through a conversation. Because I did find that exposition wasn't a huge thing in this. All the conversations felt kind of natural and how people would talk, especially because they were investigators in a previous life.
And as long as you're not a half-wit, you will understand what's going on.
Yeah. So for season 2 of Reacher, my recommendation is definitely watch it. It's a great season, and I really hope we get at least another 2 seasons from them.
I'd go as far as to say, and it depends how you look at it, because obviously it's kind of crossed years, but I'd go as far as to say that if it fell all in one year, it could well be the one piece of TV that I've enjoyed the most. If we put it into last year, it was definitely the bit of TV that I enjoyed the most from the entirety of last year, hands down. There is a possibility with it straddling basically both years that it could actually be the best show that will be streamed or on TV over the 24 months. I would say that. And it's still not as good as season 1, but it is still amazing. And that it has problems. There are some things which stretch the imagination, but that's only if you're going to dissect it, like basically we have. If you just let yourself get engrossed in the show, basically you won't even notice half of these issues. You'll just go, that was actually a really enjoyable watch.
I agree. I'm actually going to go back and watch season 1 since I enjoyed season 2 so much. It's been a while, so I'm going to go do that.
Well, the whole reason why I got confused whether that happened in season 2 is because I watched season 2 and then I watched season 1 and 2 again. Basically Monday and Tuesday. So I've watched effectively 16 episodes within 2 days. Kind of blurring the lines a little bit. The one thing I will say that I thought was quite interesting. Now, I will put a bit of a proviso up here, in that it may well be because the season had not finished that it was not basically put forward. But the People's Choice Awards have basically been announced. I think, if I remember rightly, voting was for the week commencing the 13th, which could, like I said, be the reason why it was not put forward. But it was not nominated for anything. And arguably, I would say for new content, it is almost certainly one of the more anticipated shows, basically for the last 12 months. And I would argue probably one of the best that I've watched. That said, even if it was eligible at the time, if it wasn't eligible, but will be eligible, I still don't think it will do very well, because basically you've got it straddling 2 years. So it's like when it comes to the next years, if it then is eligible, they'll probably, people will probably have it so far outside of recent memory that they'll assume it was part of last year and just didn't win anything. So they basically won't nominate it. But I also think that there's a part of the side of things where it just does not fit the sort of the ideological narrative that is currently going through TV shows, Hollywood, films, basically anything that is Western made, where basically Reacher is more representative, at least I feel, of real world rather than what you would want things to potentially be if you are pushing a message. Like I touched on, it shows women in situations where they are vulnerable. They can develop. They basically grow as characters rather than being the perfect article to begin with. You can have men that are physically imposing rather than useless simps. You can have men being dominant characters. And you can have them get along with the female characters without each of them trying to belittle or outright assassinate the characteristics of another. None of these things basically exist in the current Hollywood ideology. And you can see that by the films which basically are pumped out and pumped out and pumped out and pumped out from a lot of the major picture houses. Because of that, I find that a lot of the content of what is coming out that is virtue signaling and what will be considered in a lot of instances for these rewards loses any relatability to sort of like basically day-to-day events or normal people or people's lives. It's not relatable. It's instinctively fiction because the world is not like that. And because Reacher, again, at least for me, I don't think fits within this narrative that's going on, I don't think it's likely to be nominated for any awards because basically the blueprint for the show does not match the value system or the ideology of basically the award providers. If I was to quote anyone on this, I mean, this isn't a problem that's like only just come apparent. It's a problem that's been in Hollywood probably for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. But if I was to quote anyone on it, I would quote Quentin Tarantino. Because he came out about 2-3 years ago and he turned around and said that in Hollywood at the moment, ideology is more important than the art form. And it trumps anything being good or it being entertaining. And those things that conform with the ideology is basically what will get nominated for awards. So I think it's great. I just don't think it's going to get necessarily the respect that it actually deserves.
Well, it will be unfortunate if it doesn't get recognized and win some awards because I agree, it's been a very good show. Much better than a lot of the shows that I've seen last year. But we'll have to wait and see if it is just because it was a week after the...
It is rare that there are shows that I want to watch the next episode straight away, because I do tend to watch them basically week by week if they're dropped, one episode at a time. Last year, I'd say Picard. I think Picard season 3 was last year. So I'd say that and Reacher. And I can't remember if there's a Cobra Kai released last year or if that was the year before. But if there was a Cobra Kai released last year, then they're the only 3 seasons. The only 3 series that I've watched week by week. If there wasn't a Cobra Kai, then it's Picard season 3 because that was amazing, and Reacher. And like I said, Reacher doesn't necessarily fit into last year or this year.
No, but we recommend it for this year's watching. So go out and watch it.
Yeah, do it.
And watch season 1 if you haven't. It's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we definitely should tell them to watch season 1 because there's a lot of building that helps season 2. And like I said, I feel season 1 is the better season. So if you're only going to watch one, watch season 1. But I'd recommend that you watch both. So, now that that's done, and obviously you're going to watch season 1 and probably watch season 2 again, I guess one thing that might be worth discussing at this point is what are you actually looking forward to this year, given that we are almost out of the drought season that is January, and we've got a full year of content of questionable nature coming out?
Well, the big thing that's on my to-watch list this year is The Last Airbender from Netflix.
Yeah, it's on mine too.
Because I'm a huge fan of the cartoon, anime, whatever you want to call it. I was incredibly disappointed with the film, but the trailer that we've seen for Netflix's show looks like it honors the source material. And again, the casting, from what I've seen, these actors and actresses in other shows, I've enjoyed them. So I'm looking forward to watching this when it comes out. I believe it comes out next month. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
You see, just on the Airbender, you mentioned the Air film. The film's one of my guilty pleasures. It's a film that I know is bad, and it's not a good rendition, but I can quite happily watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's nobody says you can't enjoy a bad thing.
No. My annoyance, the thing I'm disappointed with, is that they didn't actually take the story forward. That they didn't do other films, but I understand why they didn't, because it bombed.
Yeah, and it did not show the bending as it should be. It was very wooden.
Yeah.
It should have been much more flowy. Even earthbending should have been more flowy than they showed it. It was not good. But again, you're not arguing that it is good. I don't care if you enjoy it or not. At the end of the day, we all enjoy different things.
It's a bad film, and as an adaptation of the anime, it's bad.
But, yeah, I think it's because I love I just love the cartoon so much. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
So again, maybe he's not looking forward to, but I'm definitely intrigued about this new The Walking Dead show that should be out this year, since apparently Andrew Lincoln is coming back for it. I will say that I got a bit bored of The Walking Dead, the original, because it just felt like the same thing over and over again.
I have not seen it past season 3. So I've watched the end of the season. I think the end of season 3 is when they lose the prison. The prison base. I might be talking pure rubbish. It's been so long since I've actually watched it. I haven't seen anything after that. I haven't seen Fear the Walking Dead either, the spin-off. So, that might... If that's something that I do watch, I feel like my required watching before I go into that is probably going to take me about 6 months.
Yeah, there's a lot to catch up on, but to be honest, I'm happy just to jump in without having seen what happened to Rick in the original. I don't even know if he died or if he just left. I don't know. I haven't got a clue. So, but I'm willing to give it a chance. Also, I'm intrigued about the Amazon Mr. and Mrs. Smith show. So basically that's just a take on the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie film from the noughties.
Is that all that you're looking forward to from Amazon at the moment?
That feels like that should be a segue, audience, but I'm completely drawing a blank.
there is a possibility, however small, that season 2 of The Rings of Power might be released.
Oh, no, I'm definitely not. I haven't seen the first one. And to be honest, I'm not even going to watch it for this, right? I'm not. I refuse.
You can refuse to watch season 1, but you're going to have to watch season 2.
Nah. I'll just sit here and make comments. I'm not watching it.
Well, guys, you heard it first. It's got to be a one-view review, unfortunately, because I will watch it, because I am looking forward to it, but for all the wrong reasons. The worst thing that I learned about this is apparently they signed for 5 seasons.
They were ambitious.
5 seasons. And there's already talk that they may be looking to try to curtail that to 3. And the rumor is that the Ring of Power will be maybe being made at the end of season 2, as in Sauron's ring.
Yeah. I think we all figured that
So
out.
if he's making his ring at the end of season 2, what the hell were they planning on doing for 3 seasons?
I have no idea.
You can't have 3 seasons of war.
Of
It'd
course
be
they can.
needlessly long.
They should have started with Morgoth. They should have done something with Morgoth.
And the other thing is just, I know this is a massive segue and we're going down a rabbit hole, but I don't care. In season 1, the culmination of season 1 is they make the 3 elven rings, but they are the first rings that are made. But in the source material, they are the last rings that are made, other than Sauron's ring. Because they practiced on making the Rings of Power. And their practice jobs were the ones that were given to basically man and dwarf. And then they made the elven rings, which basically were like the culmination of the craft. They were the pinnacle of the craft. So theirs are supposed to be the most powerful. Which would make sense, because your work would be flawed when you were first doing it. So they gave the flawed ones away, and then basically they kept the good ones. And then Sauron makes his master ring. But honestly, Rings of Power is a season which shows such disrespect to everything which has come before it. But I will still watch it, because I'm hoping it will be as much of a car crash as it is, as I'm expecting it to be.
We also have the Penguin HBO series coming out this year.
I'm intrigued, but because you are in a different country, you get to watch that on HBO, whereas us in the merry UK cannot get HBO. So we have to rely on Sky. Which means I will find alternate ways to watch it.
You do you.
I will. Is there anything else you're looking forward to? Because there's a couple of things that I'm very intrigued by.
A lot of it's TV shows, to be honest, that I'm intrigued with.
I would 100% say the same. I mean, I haven't looked at what films are coming out sort of more long term, but the only film that I'm like, I have to see that when it comes out is Dune 2 or Part 2.
Well, one film that I was intrigued to see that's already out is The Beekeeper.
I have seen it.
Jason Statham. So I'm quite. I don't think it's going to be a good movie, but I think it's going to be dumb and it's going to be fun. So
it's, you know what it is? Perfectly fine. It's Jason Statham doing what Jason Statham does. It's decent. It's action packed. The plot is, I was about to say weak, but it's not really weak. It's just something which has been done a billion times before, sort of thing. Like, it's just generic action, dumb fun film. And like I said, perfectly fine watch. I wouldn't necessarily praise it in any way, shape, or form. And there are holes that I could pick at it, but if I just want something to watch, generic action film, yeah, it's spot
on. Well, after doing some quick Googling, apparently there's going to be a Borderlands film.
What? Is that being released this year?
Yeah, apparently release date is August 2024.
Is it Netflix?
I can't see from what I'm looking at. No, Lionsgate.
Lionsgate. Okay. I'm moderately intrigued.
Oh, I'm so intrigued. I loved playing Borderlands back in the day. So if
Yeah,
they
well,
make it over the top, just run and gun nonsense, I'm so on board with that. So, and if they do, oh, they've got to nail Claptrap though. Claptrap has to be. Oh, see, now that could be just a. Again, it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be fun.
Yeah, because the one thing I will say is the Borderline games are not necessarily renowned for plot.
No, their storyline's non-existent.
That,
But
that storyline is thin and has more holes in it than a colander.
yeah, well,
But
according to
it's dumb
Google,
fun.
yeah, dumb fun. That's really all I need right now. According to Google, there's actually quite a lot of movies coming out this year. Obviously,
Well,
we have your favorite movies coming out, Madam Web.
no
Apparently,
odds.
there's Joker 2 was also coming out this year.
Speaking of which, Madam Web,
Okay.
let's play a little game. How much do you think it'll do at box office globally? Would you
30
would you like me
30
to
million.
start you off with how much it costs to make?
No, I'm going 30 million.
You think 30 million worldwide?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to do well.
I don't think it'll do well. I just don't think it'll do quite that bad.
No, I think it's. We're talking about opening weekend, right?
No, we're talking full run.
Off. Full run. Oh, okay.
Opening weekend, I don't think you will be far off. I think optimistically it might do 35. It's probably going to do 25 opening weekend. And domestically, I wouldn't be surprised if it only does about 10 to 15.
For its complete run, I'm going to say 200, 250.
You are optimistic. I'm going to say 145 million. And once it comes out, we'll recap this because basically, I think it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be really, really bad. Incidentally, I will just tell you how much the budget was. So it cost 85 million to make, and there are reports that they have spent more on marketing than they spent on the entire budget of the film.
Oh, wow.
So it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination to think that they have probably, all in all, spent on that film somewhere in the region of 200 to 250 million. And that would probably be a low ball.
Yeah.
And
So,
I do not think it'll clear that. I think it's another loss.
well, a movie that I'm happy to see coming out this year is Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
You know what it is? The previous two, perfectly enjoyable, family-friendly films.
Yeah, I enjoyed them. I came away with them, and I was like, I had a fun 2 hours. So I've actually, and I thought the introduction of Tails and Knuckles in the second one, very good. Jim Carrey does a very good job of playing the bad guy. So yeah, when it finished and they had that end credit scene with showing the I don't know his name, but the Black Sonic, the Black Hedgehog.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember his name. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, I hope they are doing a third one because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, this one might be a guilty pleasure because it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I enjoy the Venom films, and there's going to be a third one, so I'm on board to watch that.
The Venom films, I personally feel are bad films, but, and by the way, it was Shadow. The Venom films, I think, are bad films. They're okay for a watch. Would I rewatch them? Probably not.
I've rewatched the first one a couple of times, and I thought I like I said, I'm not claiming they're good movies. I'm just saying I enjoy them.
Get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
You can't play that all the time.
One that I am quite intrigued about is Furiosa.
You know what it is? It depends. I've just got a feeling that they're going to go so girl boss on that.
It's going to be a big hit or miss. I don't think there's going to be middle ground with it. It's either going to
No.
be great or it's going to suck.
Yeah. And I think if if any early viewings or anything like that give a hint that basically it's very, very girl boss centric, I think it'll be a miss, realistically. I'd like to see what they do, but I won't be racing out to see it unless we choose to review it. So, seasons that I'm looking forward to, and I will be honest, most of these are for the wrong reason, not the good reason. Rings of Power, which we've already covered. Halo Season 2. Especially after, all the stuff with regards to the lead character, the actor, I think it's Pablo Schreiber, coming out and basically turning around and saying that they had to remove the helmet, and that basically if you didn't like the fact that they removed the helmet so that they could tell more of the backstory of John 117, basically that the show's not for you. Which, ironically, is exactly what all of the fans said, that they didn't like it because it wasn't truthful to Master Chief. So I'll be interested to see where they go with that, because the only thing that they've admitted was that Master Chief having sex was probably a bad move in the grand scheme of things. But, we'll see how they can go with Season 2. The final season of Cobra Kai. Gray has not seen any of the Cobra Kai. I'm trying to get him to watch it. If you want him to watch it, comment, basically put it in, tell him to watch Cobra Kai, so that we can review it rather than me just sat there talking the whole time while he just stares into the abyss. Other than that, the main other thing that I am looking forward to, and this is 100% for the wrong reasons, is The Acolyte. The next installment on the dumpster fire that is Star Wars. And Gray will be watching it, because if they release it episodically, I fully intend to be doing it in every stream until it ends.
Yeah.
Well, except we will be dissecting it about just how bad it is.
Sure, I'll do that. I don't know if it's been pushed back because of what Disney's going through with the guy that plays Kang and his legal troubles and all of that stuff. But is Deadpool 3 still supposed to come out this year? Or is it being pushed back to next year?
I believe Disney, a lot of this is down to basically the fact that they've canned a whole load of crap that was in development. Obviously, what in development means is a very, very loose definition. Because I would say if it's in development, that you're basically filming. I would say that it's being made. But in development for Disney seems to be just, we're thinking about making it. It's in development. We've thought about it, basically, as the starting point for in development. So films with Disney will be in development for ages. But there were so many films that were in development that, with how bad they did last year, have quietly been shelved. Probably indefinitely. There's loads of content through Disney and Marvel that they've just destroyed. Basically, they're not proceeding with it. For instance, Daredevil. Basically, they shit canned 6 episodes to basically start from scratch because it was that bad. And combine that sort of realization that the content that you're pumping out is dross and you're going to take a massive loss on it, with the writer's strike, then the actors strike as well. There's not much tabled for the next 12 months. I think the only Marvel film that's tabled for the next 12 months, if I remember rightly, is potentially Deadpool. And
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
there is a real chance it will get basically moved back. There's no set date, as far as I'm aware yet, but they were aiming for this year. Obviously, if anyone knows for definite whether that's the case, feel free to obviously put a comment, anything like that. We will read the comments. We will get back to people. You know, at the end of the day, we're not basically the ultimate authority on any of this stuff. So if you've got any information or any questions or anything like that, we'll respond. But yeah, basically, there's a real possibility that if they push that back, there'll be nothing from Marvel, which is insane. To be fair.
Oh, apparently, it's Deadpool 3 has finished filming, and it's scheduled for a release date of July 26th.
So they have announced. So I'm a little bit.
That's That's Ryan Reynolds tweeting. So.
Okay. So that's definite. So yeah, that is the only film I believe from Marvel that is scheduled for 2024.
To be honest, I'm okay with that. I've enjoyed the previous two Deadpools. I am worried now that it's under the Disney umbrella that it gets
I think
Disney-fied.
you should be. There is apparently some insane cameos. Basically in it, assuming that they make the final cut, it'll be insane. But I am genuinely fearful that Disney might just sprinkle some of that Disney powdered shit basically all over it.
Well, I'm going to be optimistic because we have Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and we have Hugh Jackman as Wolverine again. So I'm going to try to be positive.
So in this, you're taking Mr. Optimistic and I'm Mr. Pessimistic. Is that what you're saying?
For this particular movie, I'm going to keep my optimistic high.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, I'll let you do that for now. But do not have a go at me when I say I told you so.
That's fine. That's fine. We can talk about it then. We'll still be friends. It's absolutely fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So, I guess that is basically that for this evening, unless you've got anything else.
No, I've enjoyed the chat about Reacher. I enjoyed. So yeah, I hope people have also enjoyed Reacher, so we can actually get a season 3. But that's it for me tonight.
Okay. Well, all I can say, guys, is that if you have liked the stream, liked the content, basically, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. Obviously, we are a growing channel. We will be doing this every week. So obviously, stay tuned for more, hopefully, good content. All right. Well, see you around.